Order a bowl of pho, arrange to meet someone at 8 p.m., ask a stranger for directions, do all three in Hanoi, then do them again in Ho Chi Minh City. I guarantee you'll walk away with three completely different experiences, even though you never left the same country. That's because Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City aren't just two cities. For a lot of Vietnamese people, they're basically two countries stitched into one. I'm Vietnamese, and I've lived in both. Today I'm showing you the 8 biggest differences between these two cities. Before we get into the list, one thing needs to be said. This isn't about which city is better. Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City are two different personalities of the same people. One carries the quiet, ancient weight of a 1,000-year-old capital. The other moves with the fast, wide-open energy of one of Southeast Asia's youngest business hubs. And this split isn't random. It comes from climate, from how each city was built, and from centuries of different waves of migration. Understand these 8 differences, and you'll understand why Vietnamese people joke that you haven't really seen Vietnam until you've been to both. 1. Climate. 4 seasons versus 2. Hanoi has 4 distinct seasons. Winters can drop below 10 degrees Celsius, cold enough for a heavy coat, while summers turn hot and thick with humidity. People in Hanoi are used to swapping out their whole wardrobe by season, and there's practically a ritual around waiting for the year's first cold northeasterly wind. Ho Chi Minh City only has 2, rainy season and dry season. The temperature barely shifts year-round, rarely dipping below 20 degrees Celsius. People here can wear a t-shirt in January and July alike. Winter is something they know from TV or from a trip up north. This one climate difference ripples into almost everything else on this list. The pace of life, the way people dress, even the way they're wired. 2. Pace of life. Slow burn versus full speed. Hanoi runs at a slower rhythm. People will sit for an entire morning at a sidewalk tea stall, doing nothing but chem zol, shooting the breeze. No rush at all. Business meetings sometimes open with tea and small talk about the family before anyone gets to the actual point. Ho Chi Minh City is the opposite. Fast, no nonsense, straight to business. Meetings tend to be short, punctual, and time is money is practically the city's unofficial motto. There's a saying that captures it well. Arrange to meet someone in Hanoi at 8, and if they show up at 8:15, nobody blinks. Show up 15 minutes late to a business meeting in Ho Chi Minh City, and you may have already been mentally filed under unprofessional. I have a friend from Hanoi who moved south for work. His first month, coworkers kept gently pointing out he was a little slow answering emails. 3 months later, he was the most impatient person in the room whenever someone ran 5 minutes behind. Turns out, a city's pace spreads faster than a cold. 3. Food. Refined and light versus bold and generous. Hanoi's food culture is built around subtlety and restraint. A proper Hanoi-style pho has a clear broth, a light flavor, barely any sweetness, and comes with almost no fresh herbs on the side. People here value getting the correct flavor over variety, and tend to raise an eyebrow at anyone who messes with a traditional dish. Ho Chi Minh City goes the other way entirely. The pho here runs sweeter, the broth bolder, and it arrives with an entire basket of herbs, bean sprouts, chili sauce, hoisin. This is also where food from every corner of the country and the world collides, making for a cuisine that's far more varied and far less rigid about the rules. This is the one argument that never dies between people from the two halves of the country. Ask 10 people from Hanoi and 10 from Ho Chi Minh City what real pho tastes like, and you'll get 20 different answers, all 20 delivered with total confidence. I once watched a debate about pho run longer than an actual company meeting between 2 close friends, one from each city. Neither one gave an inch, and in the end, the only thing they agreed on was this: they were both right, and they were both wrong. 4. Streets and city planning. Old town alleyways versus modern boulevards. Hanoi, especially the Old Quarter, is a tangle of narrow alleys and tube houses packed shoulder to shoulder, the layout of a city that's been building on itself for hundreds of years. Walking through the Old Quarter can feel like wandering into a maze, but that maze is exactly what tourists fall in love with. Ho Chi Minh City is laid out more like a modern metropolis in many districts. Wider roads, though the traffic jams are just as bad. Boulevards planned in a Western style, dating back to French colonial rule, and a skyline still climbing with new high-rises. Both cities deal with the same headache, gridlock, an ocean of motorbikes, but the shape of that chaos couldn't look more different from one city to the other. 5. Business culture, cautious versus quick and open. In Hanoi, business relationships build slowly, on long-term trust and personal connection. Big decisions often come only after multiple meals, multiple meetings, plenty of time spent getting to know each other first. Ho Chi Minh City is considered the country's most dynamic economic hub, where decisions move faster and there's a much higher appetite for risk and new ideas. A huge number of Vietnam's biggest startups are headquartered here, though Hanoi has its own share of major tech names too. Neither approach is better, they're just two different philosophies, and plenty of Vietnamese businesses have succeeded precisely by learning to operate differently in each city. 6. Nightlife, early to bed versus wide awake. Hanoi winds down early. Most restaurants and shops close well before you'd expect in a major world city, though the old quarter still has its pockets of late bars and a lively weekend walking street. Ho Chi Minh City's nightlife runs on a completely different clock. Bars, clubs, and late-night food streets keep going well past midnight, living up to its reputation as the city that never sleeps. If you're an early-to-bed kind of person, Hanoi might suit you better. If you want nightlife that doesn't quit, Ho Chi Minh City is the obvious answer. But there's a more interesting way to look at this. Hanoi goes to bed early, not out of laziness, but because this is a city that's kept the rhythm of a 1,000-year-old capital, where the evening belongs to family. Ho Chi Minh City stays up late, not out of restlessness, but because it was built by people who never stopped racing against time to change their lives. 7. Architecture and heritage. 1,000 years of history versus an East meets West mashup. Hanoi, capital for over 1,000 years, is dense with historic temples and landmarks. From the Temple of Literature to the Old Quarter's famous 36 streets, where nearly every road carries its own piece of history. Ho Chi Minh City's urban history is much shorter, but it's built a distinctive architectural identity all its own. French colonial landmarks like Notre Dame Cathedral and the Central Post Office standing shoulder to shoulder with rising modern skyscrapers, creating a skyline that feels nostalgic and futuristic in the very same glance. 8. Personality, reserved and reflective versus open and easygoing. This is the one that stirs up the most debate because it leans on a popular stereotype, not an absolute truth, and there are millions of exceptions on both sides. But the stereotype exists for a reason. Plenty of people feel that Hanoians tend to be more reserved, more attentive to formality and etiquette, more cautious about making friends or trusting strangers, something often traced back to the city's long Confucian roots and its role as the country's political and cultural center. Meanwhile, people in Ho Chi Minh City are often seen as more open and easygoing, quicker to make friends, something that may trace back to the city's history as a landing point for migrants from all over, where being open made it easier to fit in. Stereotype or not, this is the difference that comes up most in every conversation about these two cities. Not geography, not food, but how people actually feel about each other's character. So what do these 8 differences really say about Vietnam? This is a country whose identity doesn't fit inside a single mold. Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City are like two siblings raised in the same household who chose completely different paths. One stayed to keep the family home standing, the other left to build something of their own. If you ask me which city I like more, the honest answer is, depends on my mood. Some days I crave Hanoi's stillness, its quiet depth. Other days I want nothing more than to throw myself into Ho Chi Minh City's relentless energy. There's a question I get asked more than any other when people find out I've lived in both. So, which one is the real Vietnam? And the most honest answer I have is both. Vietnam isn't one picture, it's 2 pictures hung side by side, each telling half the story, and you need to look at both before you can see the whole wall. These are just 8 out of countless fascinating differences between my country's 2 biggest cities. If this got you curious, wait for the next video. I'll take you even deeper into things about Vietnam that most people never get to see. Subscribe, and I'll keep taking you deeper into the real Vietnam, not the version you'd read in a book.